Writing. The first thing I noticed was her hand against my window. The second was the fear in her eyes. It was almost midnight, and my new neighbor was standing outside my bedroom, staring through the glass as if she were searching for something she had lost years ago. I pulled the curtain aside and caught her completely off guard. Trying to lighten the strange moment, I smiled and said, "Nothing to steal here." She looked at me for several seconds, then gave me a tired, almost heartbreaking smile and whispered, "How about you?" Before I could understand what she meant, she turned and hurried back toward her house. My name is Daniel, and at 39, I had become the kind of man who preferred quiet rooms to crowded ones. I repaired old furniture for a living and lived alone in the small house my father had left me. After losing my parents and then watching my closest friend move across the country, I had slowly gotten used to silence. My neighbors knew me as the man who fixed broken chairs, shoveled snow for elderly residents, and rarely complained about anything. I didn't know much about the woman who had recently moved into the house beside mine. Her name was Clara, and she had arrived 3 weeks earlier with only a few boxes and an old blue car. If you believe that kindness, trust, and second chances can change someone's life, please like this story, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories about unexpected connections. After that strange night, I expected Clara to avoid me. Instead, the next morning, I found a small note beneath my front door apologizing for what had happened. She wrote that she had been frightened and wasn't thinking clearly. She promised there was nothing dangerous going on and asked me not to worry. I smiled at the note, but something about it bothered me. People didn't usually stand outside a stranger's bedroom window at midnight unless something was seriously wrong. 2 evenings later, I saw her sitting alone on the steps of her house. The porch light was broken, so I brought over my toolbox and fixed it. She thanked me but kept her eyes lowered. I noticed that most of her windows were covered from the inside, and there were still moving boxes stacked against the walls. The house looked less like a new beginning and more like someone was trying to hide from the world. We slowly became neighbors instead of strangers. I repaired her kitchen cabinet. She left a plate of cookies outside my door. I helped her carry groceries. She started watering the plants in my front garden whenever I worked late. None of it was dramatic, but little by little, the empty space between our houses began to feel smaller. Then one afternoon, I saw a black sedan parked outside Clara's house. A man in an expensive coat stepped out. Clara opened her front door, saw him, and immediately froze. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see her shaking her head. The man pointed toward the house, then toward the street. Clara stepped backward and closed the door. He remained outside for several minutes before leaving. That evening, Clara came to my house. She finally told me the truth. Her father had died 6 months earlier. After his death, her older brother had taken control of the family business and convinced everyone that Clara wasn't capable of managing her own life. She had spent years depending on her family, and when she finally decided to leave, they treated her decision as a betrayal. The man in the black sedan was her brother. She had moved next door because it was the first place she could afford that was far enough away from her family but still close enough to the city. I asked why she had been standing at my window that first night. She hesitated. Then she admitted she had seen the light in my workshop and remembered something I had told her when she first moved in. I had casually said that if she ever needed help, she could knock on my door. She had needed help that night. But she had been too afraid to knock. So she stood outside my window instead. I told her she could have knocked. She looked at me and said she wasn't used to people opening doors without expecting something in return. That sentence changed the way I saw her. Over the following weeks, Clara began rebuilding her life. She found work at a local community center and started volunteering at a food pantry. She wasn't wealthy, powerful, or particularly confident anymore, but she was becoming independent. Then her brother returned with lawyers. He claimed Clara had signed away part of her inheritance years earlier. He threatened to take everything from her unless she returned home and stopped challenging him. Clara was terrified. But this time, she didn't stand outside my window. She knocked on my front door. I helped her find a lawyer and organize the documents she had. I sat with her while she made difficult phone calls. I never told her what decisions to make. I simply reminded her that she had the right to make them herself. The legal battle lasted months. During that time, Clara changed. The frightened woman who had once stood outside my window slowly disappeared. In her place was someone who could finally look people in the eye and say no. Eventually, the court ruled in her favor. Her brother had manipulated several documents, and Clara regained control of what legally belonged to her. She didn't celebrate with expensive clothes or a luxury vacation. Instead, she bought the abandoned building across from the community center and turned it into a small resource center for people trying to rebuild their lives after difficult circumstances. She called it the Open Door. One evening, nearly a year after that first strange night, I was working late in my workshop when I heard a gentle knock on my window. I looked up. Clara was standing outside. This time, she was smiling. I opened the window and joked that she still hadn't learned how doors worked. She laughed and reminded me of the first thing I had ever said to her. "Nothing to steal here." Then she told me what she had meant when she answered, "How about you?" She hadn't meant that she wanted to steal me away from my life. She meant that she had been searching for something she couldn't name. Someone who would see her as a person instead of a burden. Someone who wouldn't judge her past. Someone who would stay long enough to see her become herself again. And somehow, she had found that in the quiet man next door who had simply fixed her porch light. I realized then that I had been searching too. I thought I had been looking for a quieter life. But what I really needed was a reason to open my door again. Clara never stole anything from me. She gave me something I had forgotten existed, a reason to believe that loneliness doesn't have to be permanent. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who might be quietly struggling, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes one small act of kindness can become the beginning of an entirely different life. And before the ending, comment this line: sometimes the person standing outside your window isn't looking for something to take, they're hoping someone will finally open the door. Because we never truly know what someone is carrying behind a closed door. And sometimes, the smallest kindness, a repaired light, an open door, or simply saying, "I'm here," can remind a person that they are not alone.